What's up guys, welcome to Munchkins Gaming, where we take your gaming to the next level. This is Munchkins logging in to bring you another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and welcome back to another video guide. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the latest Heretic event featuring Quistis' LD in the banners. Now before we do start, like and subscribe if you haven't already, because it does help the channel guys, and I would really appreciate it as well. Now without further ado, let's start this video. Alright guys, so we'll start this video off as always in how to deal with the Lufenia Orb, which starts when you reaches the boss HP down to 80%. This will not disappear once it appears, and you get 1 Lufenia Orb counter when the target is delayed by 1, and you get 10 Lufenia Orb counters when the target is delayed by 2 turns or more. So characters that are going to be able to do this are quite abundant. However, there is a caveat which we will be talking about later in this video. So characters that can delay like Quistis, Cloud of Darkness, Aranea, Sync to a lesser extent as well, since you will have to make sure you have the debuff up. Sabin can do this, Cloud, Sid Reigns to a lesser extent once again, and of course you got Garland as well, which can only, I believe, delay 1 turn at a time, but it's still there. There's quite a few characters that can delay, but once again there is a caveat which we will talk about later. Alright guys, now let's talk about how the fight works. So immediately you will notice at the start of the turn that the boss will have an HP regen aura up, and they will be healing 700,000 of their HP each and every turn. Even though it's not their turn, they still get the HP regen. So this HP regen is very important to note that it actually still works during summon and burst phase. So when you are in your burst phase and you can't remove this particular aura, then tough luck. You have to time your burst phases right for this one, and of course your summon phase as well to a lesser extent. Now it's also important to note that the boss also gets an HP shield when they reach less than 80 and 30% of their HP. Now this shield sort of grants them some sort of immunity to like normal delay until you really take it off. As far as I'm aware anyway, Quistis LD still works with the delay. That's why, I mean, she's made for this fight. Now another important thing to note is that HP regen, once you get rid of it at the start of the fight, it also comes back when you reach less than 50 and 30% of the boss's HP. Now, like most Lufenia Plus fights, the boss will also have some Brave damage reduction aura and a Brave gain reduction aura. Now, the other thing that you probably need to know, however, I don't think this will really matter much because the fight itself is structured around delaying the boss. So I'm just gonna say it anyway, that the boss also has some sort of single target magic Brave plus HP attack, and they can also increase their own turn rate and lower your speed, which is, you know, really bad if you actually let them have a turn anyway, because the fight itself is kind of designed for you to delay the boss or bosses. Alright guys, now let's talk about how you're going to deal with this fight. First of all, how you're going to take away that HP regen buff. Well, you need to delay the boss by 3 turns. Unfortunately, here is where the caveat that I was talking about earlier in this video, which is that basically you need to delay them by 3 turns, and there's only 2 characters that can actually do this, and that is Quistis and Cloud of Darkness. And with Cloud of Darkness, you really have to get that 5, darkness buff up or whatever in order for you to use the laser thing, and hopefully you break the boss and delay them as well. And I believe that is the only way. If you don't have Quistis, I highly recommend bringing Quistis along, even though you might not have her EX weapon or LD weapon. All you really need, and the only important thing here, is her 35 CP weapon. This is the only thing you need. So Don't worry if you don't have her EX, you know, your Quistis is basically here to solve the issue when in regards to the HP regen. And trust me, I did this in JP. I didn't even have an EX plus at that point. I did get her LD, but you know, like I said, the 35 CP weapon is the more important ability here, and making sure you use them sparingly as well. Now, another character that is always valuable is going to be Setzer, since he can pretty much ignore all the brave damage reduction, making sure you're doing a lot of damage, especially during those shield moments. It's very important to actually you know, do as much damage as possible before the bosses get their turn. And of course, there are a few characters that can benefit a lot from well, I suppose every character really benefits a lot from Setzer, but there are a few characters that I would really bring along when it comes to doing a ton of damage, right? Cid Rains and Vaughn comes to mind, and of course, bring some debuffs for your call abilities. This will help as well. Alright guys, now let's talk about characters to bring. First of all, bring Quistis. Trust me, it's just gonna make your life so much easier. A lot of the fights that happened during the time when this came out in JP actually use Quistis. Now, I think there is a video that didn't quote unquote bring Quistis in the main team, but still needed Quistis as a friend support. So if you can't even pull for Quistis as 35 CP for some reason or the other, at least have a friend Quistis. It's really going to help. You do have to time it very, very efficiently, but at the same time, I still think just bringing your own Quistis is definitely going to help. Your team will be Quistis and then 2 other characters. Trust me, it is for your own mental health that you bring Quistis in this fight. Now, as for call characters, like I said, bringing your characters that have debuffs on them will really help. And of course, call characters like Cloud, who can delay as well if you really need that delay, is definitely going to be helpful. But at the same time, you really want to focus a lot on debuffs in this fight, since the brave damage reduction is pretty insane, especially if you don't have Setzer who can just bypass that, right? So making sure you have your debuffs, or at least buffs for your own self, you know, to do as much damage as you can. Alright guys, now let's talk about party compositions, and of course the first one that I would suggest is the team that I went with, which is Quistis, Setzer, and Cid Rains. The Cole team, I went with Kurasame, Gabranth, and Amiditaloyan, and I went with another Quistis for my support. I mean, you don't really need to, as long as your own Quistis is pretty okay. And I went with Ramuh for my summon. I actually forgot to change it to Pandemonium. I should have went with Pandemonium rather than Ramuh in this one, but the team basically makes sure that the shields get broken during Cid Rains' turns with his knockback, making sure I do a ton of damage and bypass that shield as quick as possible. And of course, Quistis is there to deal with the HP regen. Now the next team I have for you guys is the team also that I went with during my JP during this time. So this is my JP team, which I basically just replaced Cid Rains with Vaughn, since Vaughn still does a ton of damage, right? And you have your own burst phase here as well. Now, it's important to note that you do have to make sure you time your burst phase, like I mentioned earlier. And yeah, I went with Kurasame. I think I went Cloud and Gabranth and with the other one, but I didn't have a Amiditaloyan at that time, and I still don't have a Amiditaloyan LD in my JP account to this day. So I just had to make use with whatever I have, right? Quistis again for the support and Ramuh for the summon. Alright guys, the next one is going to be Sid Drain's Aphmau and Quistis, with Jack, Kurosame, and Gabron for the call, Setzer for the support, and Pandemonium for the summon. Now, this team, really, you're probably going to do a little bit less brave damage since you don't have a Setzer on this team, but it is still quite possible. You can just switch out Aphmau later when the brave damage reduction is really bad. But yeah, Jack is definitely there to help a little bit with the overall brave damage. Of course, Kurosame and Gabron for the HP damage. Pandemonium, obviously you're going to take advantage of a lot of the knockback and do as much damage as you can with that. Alright guys, so we're finally towards the end of this video, and of course I'll give you guys my final thoughts regarding this fight. Now, this fight feels like a force pull for Quistis, but at the same time it's not totally a force pull, since like I said, you pretty much just need her 35 CP weapon. And make sure it does a decent amount of damage, but the idea is for you to actually just delay. Having a friend Quistis definitely helps once again. Cloud of Darkness can sort of pull this off. However, she is very limited. You need like 5 stacks of that, which you can get immediately, right? But she only has like 4 of that, and the rest you're trying to get those stacks up. So she is okay to bring, however she can be very limited because you need that 5 stacks, but it's still doable, right? The fight itself, if you can just deal with the mechanics, isn't that bad. And like I said, you only need Quistis' 35 to actually deal with the mechanic. Yeah. The other good thing is obviously she has a rework. She can delay even with her S1, and if you do get her LD, then you really have no issues like what you guys are seeing in this video. And the other thing that I actually forgot to mention earlier was there's no enrage for this fight, so you can technically just single target one of the boss and deal with that, and then you can single target the next boss and deal with that and finish the fight. I kind of did it here. Obviously I still have a little bit of splash damage here and there, but that is the idea. So yeah, I think if I'm gonna rate this, it's gonna be in the okay department. It wasn't that difficult once you know how to deal with the mechanic. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. So anyway guys, remember to click like and subscribe if you haven't already. It does help the channel, and we really appreciate it if you can share this video as well to other DFFO players who are struggling with their Lufenia or Lufenia Plus fights, and hopefully this video helps them. And you can check out my other videos as well, and make sure to follow me on Twitter and on Facebook at Munchkins Gaming. This is Munchkins logging off. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next level.